everybody. The plane's getting all the attention. So we're going to go ahead and start. I wanted to say to the test enthusiasts of the world, welcome to the 2024 International Test Conference. So I'm Ann Gattiker. I'm the general chair this year, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to ITC. I think you'll find a great program we have over the next few days and a great set of events this year. So first, of course, want to thank our supporters. Couldn't do it without them. So thank you so much to all these companies who have been there for us, providing support for the conference and for the test community in general. So we have some supporter events this year. We have the Siemens Diamond event that'll be held in this room shortly after the plenary, and we'll have oh, what's wrong? Oh no. Okay, slide person? Okay. Yep, that's me. Should I go? Sorry, technical difficulty. Okay, that's almost right. There we go. Okay, yeah. So we have the Siemens Diamond event, as I mentioned, and they've got 4 lively speakers who will be talking to us. There we go. And we also have our platinum supporters have presentations as well. So they're listed here, and that'll be today from 4 to 6 in this very room. And then, of course, we have sponsors. The IEEE, the Philadelphia section, the Computer Society, they help us sponsor this event. And without their sponsorship, this type of event just wouldn't be possible. Of course, we're a nonprofit, and we're very happy to have their support. Our steering committee are remarkably dedicated volunteers. Most conferences of this size would have way more paid people on the staff. We do almost everything volunteer. Truly remarkable team, so I just wanted to have a shout out there to the committee. Okay, thanks. Oh, thanks everybody, yeah. So ITC, of course, is more than a conference, it's a whole week. We've had 12 tutorials over the past 2 days, lots of learning. And this week we're lucky to have 4 keynote and visionary talks. We've got 5 parallel paper sessions, something for everyone. We've got regular papers, special sessions, and special panels. And we also have posters this year, and of course our exhibitors, right next door. We have corporate presentations, and then following our 3 days of the conference proper, we've got 3 workshops that'll start on Thursday and then continue into Friday. So AI at ITC, so AI is everywhere, it's everybody's talking about it, and this is true, especially at ITC. So today, our keynote and our visionary talks will both be talking about AI, and we have an AI session track that has 4 different paper sessions, so lots of papers in that area. Our sponsors' presentations will be talking about AI, and 2 of the tutorials that we've held also. So, plenty, all you can eat there for AI at ITC. ITC also, it's really a community, and we have some events this year that celebrate not just technical topics, but the community itself. So we have an allyship fireside chat taking place here in this room today. And this year we have something new, a career fair for students on Thursday. And then on Thursday also we have the CHIPS Act panel, and one of the key aspects of the CHIPS Act is workforce development. So that sort of focuses in on our ITC community and growing sort of the next generation. Okay, so this year we have a new mobile app. We're using the SWOVA mobile app. Hopefully most folks have already scanned the code and downloaded. It's really simple to download, simple to use. Yeah, you use the email that you registered for the conference, and then you have to create an account if you haven't used WOVA before. But it's pretty cool. You can build your own schedule. There's a simple map function. There's social functions. So give it a try. These calls out some specific things. So there's surveys. At the end of each session, there will be a survey, and also at the end of the conference. And then there's a passport program, so you'll have a QA code that exhibitors can scan. And then that'll enable you to be part of a prize drawing that'll occur on Thursday. So we have a leaderboard, which already is remarkably popular. So you score points by doing the surveys and having interactions. And, again, we have some prizes that you get into a drawing if you do that. And we have a trivia contest that'll start later in the week. That's another way to get some of those really cool earphones. So folks with top scores will be entered into a drawing, and the results of the drawing will be posted online. Okay, so as far as orientation, physical orientation, here we are, we're on level 4. So the exhibit floor is right next door. You probably walked right by it. And we certainly encourage everybody to spend some time on the exhibit floor. We have a welcome reception tonight. It's going to be outside in the sort of grassy area on the ground level. Really beautiful place, and we look forward to welcoming everybody at the reception. We have generous coffee breaks. They're in the exhibit hall, and lunch will also be available in the exhibit hall. So, a lot of interesting things in the exhibits, and really encourage people to go and spend some time there. As far as session rooms, we've got session rooms on this floor and then on the floor below. So the highlighted boxes there are the places that you need to head to for the various sessions. You can use the WOA app to find out which room is which. On the exhibit floor, in the middle back, we'll have our lunch and coffee breaks. And then on the flanks, we'll have the posters and the career fair. Want everyone to encourage everyone, to sort of interact with ITC, not just this week, but all year through social media. So there are links to all of our social media pages on our website. Sort of a special thanks. We did some special marketing things this year, and actually we have a very good attendance. So special thanks to some of the folks who helped out with our marketing this year. So ITC has expanded, not just our conference here, but we have sister events in both India and Asia. And our India conference in particular took place in the summer, and the call for papers for this coming year is already out. So please be sure to look for that. And next, I have the pleasure of introducing our amazing 2024 program chair, who's done just tons of work and has put together truly a fabulous program for us. So Savita.
Welcome everyone. So I should have checked this. So before I begin, we do definitely have a really exciting program in store for you guys. But before I begin, I wanted to do a huge shout out, and I'm not going to do it for them, but I really wanted to do a shout out for the entire program committee. We've listed them out over here. Yeah, thank you. So this is an amazing group of people. They are the backbone of ITC, and they've been working tirelessly to curate content and provide feedback to all of the authors to ensure that you just see the very best quality. No defects were left unturned here. These folks are a diverse community that represent the breadth and wealth that we have within the semiconductor industry. So they have experts from all different domains. So definitely thank you for spending all this time curating the content that we're going to share with you shortly today. So we actually had, where would we be without this community of spectacular authors and innovators who have really gotten out there. And what we love most about this community is that people are just willing to share everything, even the mistakes they've made and how they've grown to be able to benefit the broader community with their insights. So we received over 200 submissions, and unfortunately we couldn't accommodate everyone into the program, but we do want to appreciate and do another shout out to all of the authors. So maybe let's give a round of applause to all of the folks. So like Anne said, AI is everywhere. So we have AI pretty much every day. So there's no single day that's themed with AI. So enjoy the content that's sprinkled around. Today, you'll find that most of the AI content is in the A track, so conveniently enough, so that should be easy to remember. On Tuesday, so later today, we have a lot of other DFT industry best practice, post silicon themed content. On Wednesday is where we talk more about some focused areas in 3D-IC and emerging technology. Thursday is when we'll talk more about automotive and SLM. And like I said before, we had to really curate the content and cherry pick sessions of the papers. So we have around 37 regular papers, but we have an increased number of short papers. So these are still really impressive pieces of work, but a little bit more bite-sized, and we have more this year than we had last year. There are daily specials. Today is really exciting after, of course, the keynotes and the visionary talks that we're going to have. We also have an allyship fireside chat, which is really important in this community. So looking forward to that. As Anne mentioned, we have sessions with our diamond and platinum sponsors. On Wednesday, we have AI, LLM tracks, multi-die test, DPPM, and also have our TTTC PhD competition. So it's our chance to really embrace the next generation of innovators. Thursday, we have back-to-back test standard sessions. Yesterday, we were talking about this, and the best way to get involved and pass it forward is to just invest time and effort into standardizing what we do. We also have reliability and SLM tracks and a session on ITC India presentations. We have many panels. We kicked things off yesterday with a Better Together panel. We tried something a little bit different. I didn't really know what was actually going to happen until we showed up. It was very exciting. Got to learn about a Korean drinking game, apparently, called Apatu. So I'm not saying that we're going to offer that today, but it's something to check out. But you didn't hear that from me. Well, maybe you did. All right. And again, we have other exciting panels on 3D-IC, testing chiplets, and also the CHIPS Act on Thursday. We also have over 40 different poster sessions, and this is a great way to interact more at a personal level with the different authors, so I really encourage you guys to go and check out the poster sessions as well. All right, so the proceedings are going to be available online. Folks should have gotten an email on how to do that. Just a little bit of logistics. We do want to make sure that the presenters are taking the opportunity to check to make sure everything's in order. So they should arrive no later than 30 minutes to their various sessions. The session chairs themselves are also responsible to make sure that all the content is there so we can support our authors. There's a practice room set up in the Sapphire Green Room. All right, and as Anne said, we've moved to the WUVA app, and so this is where you can enter your feedback and provide, so respond to the surveys, engage with the audience, and get on that leaderboard. There's some cool prizes available. And with that, it gives me great pleasure to invite to the stage Yervant Zorian.
Thanks a lot, Anne. Thanks a lot, Savita. This was a great introduction. I'm very happy to be back at ITC with all of you and present our community a little bit, which is TTTC, the Test Technology Technical Council, which happens to be the community of test technologies. Most of you are members, some of you may not be. It's time to think about that. We have a large number of individual members who are around the world, but lots of them help in the offerings. So we offer conferences such as ITC and some more we'll talk about, and we cover it in different geographies around the world. We have multiple generations of individuals who are part of it. We'll talk about the senior ones, the junior ones today, and we cover numerous topics, and the topics are changing. Topics change over time. When we started with some topics that were concentrated at the chip level initially. So we looked at the chip level solutions for some time. We have covered it at ITC, we covered it at other conferences such as VTS, and then we moved up to board level. We did a lot in the board level some time ago, from JTAG, from board level test. And then, as we know today, there are not semiconductors only. We're moving up the system, and therefore we have to cover system level. So, and we're moving that way as well with ITC and with our other events. That is covering the software, covering everything around the semiconductor as well with us. And semiconductor itself grew, and now we're dealing with multiple dies. Some time ago, we established a 3D test workshop. We did standards in that domain, 1838. We're moving a lot in that space as well. So 3D test this year for the 8th time is at ITC. So we have the workshop on Thursday, Friday, in case you haven't registered yet. Very exciting program. It covers lots of aspects from small TSVs to UCIEs to HBM and so on in the 3D test workshop. Yesterday we had 2 tutorials on the topic. They were very well attended. Now, we also went below the dies. We dealt with IPs a lot for a number of years. Today, it's the 30th anniversary of us starting to invest in embedded cores. We started P1500 in 1995, 30 years back. So what we also did over the years, we looked at things at the design stage, design for manufacturability, for yield that is moving beyond testing. Today, we look at diagnosis at the production level. We do have a new workshop that we're doing it this year for the 2nd time on test and diagnosis, again held at ITC on Thursday, Friday. Also, we moved also into the field to see what's happening in the field. For a couple of years, we're already covering SDC, silent data corruption. This is my opportunity to mention that we'll have a special issue of design and test on SDC coming out soon. So I'm working with Mehdi, with Dimitris on making that happen. Now, besides this, we kept expanding the test domain further to optimize other things. We started with security some time ago, with TTTC creating the host workshop, now a nice symposium held typically in the East Coast. Then we expanded further into reliability and safety. The SLM workshop is for the 4th time here at ITC. And also we started this year RAS Summit. RAS is reliability, accessibility, and serviceability. So reliability is very important for us. RAS is very important for lots of high-end systems. We did one in June, along with Gattiker in June, right? The RAS Summit. That was for data centers. Now we have a 2nd RAS Summit in December. It will be on automotive. So if you're interested, please approach us. And next year we'll see another combined one of data centers and automotive together. This is just to show the expansion of the topic. So even though we call ourselves as test community, but in fact we are expanding our scope over time. And AI is behind all of this. In any one of those aspects, you have lots of AI utilization as it moves. Okay. What we also do is we acknowledge some of our important members of the community. The highest award that TTTC provides every year is this Lifetime Contribution Medal for a person who has dedicated lots of effort. He made a big impact on the community and on the technology of our community. And we present it here at ITC, our flagship event. And of course, we have an article to go with in design and test. To remind you, we have nomination-based system. In July, mid-July, we get the nominations. And we had done this multiple times as well. And we have very important members of our community over the years who received this award. So today, I have the pleasure to announce this year's winner of the Lifetime Contribution Medal. This year's winner is someone that's familiar to you. He's Mani Soma. Mani has been with our community for a long time. He has contributed in various aspects. He's born in Vietnam. He has done his bachelor in Cal State University, Fresno. Then he did his master's and PhD at Stanford, joined the industry initially at GE R&D, and then moved on to become a professor in University of Washington, initially as assistant professor, all the way today to become a professor at large at University of Washington. Some more, let's wait. We have him as the NSF Center Director and Associate Director. He has done numerous things. He even became the Dean of University of Washington, of College of Engineering. But the most important contribution to our community was his contribution in the analog mixed signal domain. We consider him the father of analog mixed signal. He started building the sessions, he started bringing the papers, he did a huge amount of research in this space on multiple aspects of analog mixed signal. And he was the one who approached us to have sessions at VTS, sessions at ITC. He even started the workshop on mixed signal test domain. He became a fellow in 2006 of IEEE. He established and chaired the test bus, that is the IEEE mixed signal test bus, the working group, that is 1149.4. Many of you were part of that work. Then he founded the Pacific Northwest Test Workshop. He founded and chaired the Mixed Signal Test Workshop, which grew since 95 to many, many years, up to we celebrated 25 years not long ago. In ISCAS, he was the program chair of ISCAS. He was the general chair of ISCAS. He was part of the founding team of JETA, the journal, as well as he became the president of the IEEE Circuits and Systems Society in 2011. He received Meritorious Service Award from Computer Society, Golden Core membership from Computer Society. He was Teacher of the Year twice, at least, and he got various other awards in addition. Mani is a leader, is an innovator, as we see. He's a pioneer in test technology, and he made a huge impact on our community. Mani, thank you for everything you did.
Yervant, thank you so much for the glowing introduction. And before I begin, let me introduce my wife, Karen. She's here with me today. And without her support over the years, I wouldn't have been able to, do all this work in test. And clearly, from what you have heard since this morning, this community has been fantastic in supporting people and creating new technology. And I would like to say that this award is being accepted on behalf of the community as a whole. It's not just me, but you all have been able to work together to create it. So thanks again, and I am very glad to be a part of this group. Thank you.
Thanks, Mani. Thank you so much. Give me this medal if you want to stand here.
Okay.
We'll be happy to give this to you. This is our medal. Yeah. If you want to stand here. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much, and thanks for being with us. Thanks again, Mani. I'll move forward. Now we'll jump. We'll jump to the younger age, the students, and we have a special award that we give, named after Jerry Gordon, the Student Service Award. So we typically have multiple students who do lots of good work for our community. This award is sponsored by ITC, TTTC, the IEEE Philadelphia section, and we have Peter with us to present the award. And the recipient this year is Nicolo Bellarmino. Nicolo is from Torino. Nicolo, are you with us here somewhere? Come over. So Nicolo... Please. He has been supporting our community a lot during the past 2 years. He's still a PhD student at the European Test Symposium when I met him first, at the arts workshop, at the 3D and chiplet, and throughout the tutorials this year, he was very helpful. Please receive your award.
A very short history lesson. The ITC was founded in 1969 by the Philadelphia section. Jerry Gordon was on the first steering committee. He stayed on the steering committee until he suddenly died in 1993. At that point, the section decided to endow an award after him, and so that's where who Jerry Gordon was. And so this is the presentation from the IEEE Philadelphia section.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Thanks a lot, Peter. We appreciate it. I'll give you this as well. All right. Have a look there. Yes, yes. Peter, we're here. We'll do one later. That's okay. There you go. Okay, thanks. Thanks again. We have many students with us. Please look at this as an example. We want you to be volunteers from early years, and you learn a lot. You learn a lot by contributing to our activities, whether conferences, tutorials, standards, and so on. Peter is our representative of the IEEE Philadelphia section on the steering committee. Thanks, Peter, for being with us as well. The last award that I have to present today is the Bob Madge Award. Bob Madge has done lots of innovations. Unfortunately, he left us early, but we established an award in his name. This award is for innovation. It's not for lifetime. It's for a short period of important innovation that we receive. The award goes to either academia person or an industry person. We established it in 2015 after the departure of Bob Madge due to an accident. Again, it's based on submissions, nominations, and in the last 10 years, many important people in our community who made key contributions have received this award. This year, the recipient is coincidentally somebody from the analog domain as well. Our good friend, Steve Sunter, will receive this award. Steve has done a huge amount of work in many aspects that Mani also contributed to. Steve, give me 1 second. He chairs now the P2427. He has been very active in 1687.2. He has done many important papers and received several Best Paper Awards here at ITC, if I remember correctly, in the past 20 years. So Steve, thank you for all the good work, and you received this nice aeroplane on behalf of Bob Madge. Thanks again, Steve. I will announce an award that we'll be doing it on Thursday. It is the Best Doctoral Dissertation Award. Savita mentioned it in the program. We have a session where the finalists will be competing against each other. Typically, we do semifinals at other TTTC conferences, geographically distributed. This year, VTS in the US, ETS in Europe, and LATS in Latin America did their own semifinals, and the best 3 are here at ITC with us, and they'll be competing in that session. And the award, the winner, will be announced on Thursday at the plenary here. Okay, so if you're here, we'll be seeing that. Now, the next thing we'll do is I will transfer the podium to Jeff Rearick, our program chair from last year, to announce the best papers.
Thank you, Yervant. It's my privilege to address everybody again this year, and I have the pleasure of awarding the best papers from the 2023 conference. First and foremost, I have to talk about the program committee. They did a great job, very rigorous review of all the submissions. 2 papers rose to the top of this process. They had the highest averages and very tight standard deviations, meaning there was really broad agreement among the program committee that these were the best papers. One slightly edged out the other in terms of the performance, and so we have 2 awards to give. One is an honorable mention, the other is the best paper. And I'll start with the honorable mention paper. And 2023 honorable mention award goes to the paper from the University of Florida entitled ARC FSMG Automatic Security Rule Checking for Finite State Machine at the Netlist Abstraction. It's presented by our Kibria and co-authored by F. Faramandi and our friend Mark Taranapur from the University of Florida. So congratulations. And the best paper from 2023 goes to our friends at UC Santa Barbara for their paper, IEA Plot, Conducting Wafer-Based Data Analytics Through Chat. And this was co-authored with Mark Dupree, or M. Dupree, M. Yang, Jenny Zhang did the presentation, and Professor Li Si Wang were co-authors. So congratulations to the folks from UCSB. And we'll get those printed up. And now I'm going to hand it off to a discussion about the next ITC. And I'll let Andy, you take it away from here, or is Jennifer coming up? Paolo, that's right, sorry. We'll be back here again next year, and we'll have, Paolo will be our program chair, so we're going to talk about what's happening with the program. The last thing I'd like to leave you with, again, on the Whova app, you can score the papers and participate in that leadership thing. So you all have a role in determining the best papers for this year. And again, thanks to the program committee for their great work in selecting a really strong program. We had 20% more submissions this year than we did last year. So let's keep that trend up. Thank you very much.
Good morning. I'm very happy to cover the responsibility of the program chair next year, and I will not talk too much, just showing the new deadline. As ITC is going to be in September timeframe, we moved the deadline for abstract submission and paper finalization to March, and so now you know, take note. And of course, we count on your submissions to increase even more the number of papers next year. The information is already available on the web, itctestweek.org. You find the new call for paper for ITC 25. And thank you for supporting this conference again the next year. As well, today I have the great honor to introduce our first keynoter this year. He's Shankar Kirshnamoorthy, General Manager, EDA Group and Corporate Staff at Synopsys Corporate. Shankar leads the Technology and Product Development Group at Synopsys. Under his leadership, Synopsys has delivered several groundbreaking technologies. Before joining Synopsys in 2017, Shankar served as a general manager of the AC Design Solution division at Mentor Graphics. He joined Mentor in 2007 with acquisition of Sierra Design Automation, where he was founder and CTO. Shankar received his master in computer science from the University of Texas, Austin, and his bachelor degree in computer science from the Indian Institute of Technology in Bombay. Welcome, Shankar, to the podium. And thank you, all of you.
All right, good morning. And thank you to the organizing committee for welcoming us to ITC. My slides are not up yet, so just waiting for a couple of minutes. You know, for me, it is a bucket list item when you're giving the keynote at ITC on election day, 2024. So I don't think that's going to happen too often. So anyways, waiting for the slide. Okay, here we go. So the topic of my presentation today is test and telemetry in the age of pervasive AI. So let's start by taking a look at the semiconductor landscape around us. It took us 30 years to go from a very little revenue in the semiconductor industry to $500 billion in revenue. And that's on the back of many waves of innovation, right? The PC era, the web era, the mobile era, leading up to the IoT and cloud era. But the next 10 years, the decade we are in right now, is just seeing some incredible growth for the semiconductor industry, going from $500 billion in revenue and expecting to finish at over $1 trillion in revenue for semiconductors by the end of this decade. And this whole era is defined by a massive build-out of AI due to what we call as the age of pervasive AI or pervasive intelligence. And recently, Lisa Su made a comment that the demand for AI chips is reaching $500 billion by 2028. So many analysts believe we are going to blow past $1 trillion of semiconductor revenue even before the 2030 mark. In addition, I'm sure you all are seeing the same reports that I see when we look at the level of spend, capital expenditure, across all the major hyperscalers. So on this graph, you see the quarter-by-quarter CapEx spending of Meta and Microsoft. And you can see these companies are spending over $30 to $80 billion a year on essentially CapEx to prepare for this era of pervasive intelligence, which is going to drive a whole new era of productivity for all of us. So what is the era of pervasive intelligence? The way we like to define it is really it's three major megatrends. The first one, of course, is the build-out of AI at the cloud as well as at the edge, and all the productivity and all the promise that it brings with respect to efficiency and autonomous workflows and so on and so forth. The second one is related to silicon proliferation. Pretty much in every device around us, there is a chip, and progressively more and more complex chips, everything from your ring system at home to your washing machine to your cars, everything has silicon. And so the silicon proliferation is the second big trend. And then the third one is really, as systems become more intelligent, the level of software content in systems is growing significantly. So all this is causing a dramatic reshaping of our industry, where a traditional semiconductor company like an NVIDIA really is more and more looking like a systems company, where the product is not a chip, but the product is actually an entire rack that's delivering half an exaflop of computing with liquid cooling and all the huge software stack on top of it. At the same time, you have a systems company like Microsoft reaching deep down the stack and essentially building their own chips. So that's really where we see the silicon and systems engineering workflows beginning to overlap in a significant way. And so we believe that we have to deliver solutions that span the entire spectrum from silicon to systems. Of course, there are many, many challenges to overcome, and I'm sure you all are very familiar with this. On the upper left, probably the most popular plot in every keynote these days, right, which is the dramatic rise of computing requirements for training frontier models. Essentially, on the light blue line at the bottom, you see the Moore's law progression still trying to give around a 2x improvement with respect to performance and power, and now slowing down over the last few generations. And that red line is basically showing you the compute requirements for training frontier models, zooming up and to the right into trillions of parameters. And this essentially is creating a huge gap between what Moore's law can provide and what the requirement is, which is driving a whole wave of innovation into everything from domain-specific architectures to multi-die systems to reduce latency and so on. The second chart on the upper right is the growing cost of cloud compute in order to train frontier models. So again, on that line, you can see that to train these multi-trillion parameter models, the expectation is we're going to cross over $1 billion of cloud computing costs in order to train these models. That's the amount of computation that it's going to take. And obviously, that's going to put this out of the reach of many, many companies. So how do we bend that curve? How do we make it tractable to be able to train these models in terms of cost? Lower left, the rising energy crisis created by the build-out of AI. The chart from Schneider Electric shows that the total AI-related data center power requirement is going to go from 4.5 gigawatts by over 4x to 18.7 gigawatts by 2028. That's over a 4x increase. And just to put this in the frame of reference, 1 gigawatt is essentially a nuclear reactor's output, or it basically takes care of 1 million homes in any city. That's what 1 gigawatt is. So essentially, the fact that we need to build out 14 gigawatts of additional energy over the next few years is why there's so much of talk about essentially looking at other energy sources like nuclear to keep up with this requirement. And then the bottom right is, if the pace of innovation with generative AI is so fast with multimodal models moving to trillions of parameters, the chip roadmaps are accelerating across the industry, because otherwise you're going to have 5-6 month training cycles, which is not acceptable. And because chip roadmaps are accelerating, the number of chips being done by every design team is increasing in these companies. And there is a huge resource shortage between the resources needed and the resources actually available. So it's bringing a huge focus back on engineering productivity of design teams and how to enable them to do more with the teams that they already have. So these are some of the big trends that are essentially being driven as a result of this. I want to point to a very interesting paper that was published by the Meta team in the summer. And I know it's going to be covered in more detail at the keynote this afternoon. But essentially, the Meta team has talked about their experience training the Llama 3 405 billion parameter model over 2.5 months over a HPC GPU cluster of over 100,000 nodes. And in the process of 2.5 months of training this model, they ran into over 300 different interruptions due to a variety of sources, ranging from faulty GPUs to HBM memories to things related to the interconnect. And over 78% of interruptions were essentially related to a variety of hardware causes, including what they call a silent data corruption. This shows you that, if we want to have a reliable workflow in terms of training large AI models, we are going to have to solve this problem in a fundamental way, because the whole prospect of having to stop, restart 300 times in the process of training a model is definitely not a productive workflow. So what does it take to solve this problem? So to solve this problem, what you really need is in-field reliability, availability, and serviceability being addressed in a fundamental way for AI training. So what does that mean? Across the entire life cycle, from silicon to package to rack level to data center, these hyperscalers have built up some incredible monitoring and diagnostics capabilities in order to ensure significant uptime for their systems. But we need to now augment that monitoring, that diagnostics capabilities with a lot of detailed telemetry data coming from the chips themselves, from the packages themselves, so that the quality of what they do with the diagnostics and the monitoring can now improve significantly. For example, by having telemetry at a much lower level within the silicon, we can now have a much better insight into why chips are failing or why silent data corruption is happening. By having telemetry inside these devices, we can now optimize voltage and temperature based on the workloads that are running on that device. We can now even do predictive maintenance as we see properties from these devices as they're going through probably what is the most intensive compute workload these days, the task of training a multi-billion parameter frontier model. In addition to this, there is another big transition happening in our industry, which is the transition, what we call, to multi-die systems. So in the upper left is a chart which was presented by AMD recently, which talks about the dramatic increase in yielded cost per millimeter squared as we move to the advanced nodes, right? So it's getting progressively more and more expensive to go down to 3 nanometer, 2 nanometer, and 16 angstroms, 18 angstroms, and so on and so forth. At the same time, the gains we are getting from a node transition are diminishing significantly. The density gains, for example, the transition from 3 nanometer to 2 nanometer was barely a 5-10% gain in terms of density, and the progressive transitions below 2 nanometers are not expected to gain a whole lot more either. At the same time, the advanced packaging world has done some tremendous innovation in order to drastically improve the pitch of the interconnect for connections within a package. So we have rapidly gone from C4 to microbumps to TSVs, all the way to now hybrid bonding, which has now created the opportunity to go from maybe thousands of connections on a package to now potentially hundreds of thousands, even millions of connections on a package, thereby enabling much higher level of integration. So all these trends are translating into real movement in semiconductor markets. So by multiple research teams, the prediction is that in the server HPC AI space, as well as in the PC client space, the adoption of multi-die methods and multi-die chips being delivered is going to be significant in the next 2 to 3 years, over 90% in the server HPC AI space and 70% in the PC client space. And we are also beginning to see automotive companies really driving hard towards chiplet-based design as their systems start to get more and more complex. So let's take a look at the innovation that's happening within the multi-die area, right? On the right-hand side of this slide, you see what a typical modern integration looks like, right? You've got your HBM cubes that are connected to your compute tiles. Your compute tile has maybe some SRAM stacked on top of it with hybrid bonding. And then you've got all these multiple dies connected to each other on silicon interposers, organic interposers, silicon bridges, and RDL layers, and of course, substrate. So these are the different types of connections that are all possible within a 50 or a 70 square centimeter package. And so what you see on the left is how dramatically the interconnect density has grown with all these new innovations, right? So the lower left is your C4 bump, which was essentially where we were maybe a decade plus ago. Upper right is your on-chip interconnect, which is obviously the most densest interconnect. But over the last 15 years or so, we have seen all these great innovations around TSV and micro bumps and hybrid bonding, which has progressively improved that pitch dramatically, which is now giving us a lot more options in terms of how to integrate beyond where we are stuck at with the Moore's Law challenges, right? So instead of being stuck with your 800 square millimeter or 8 square centimeter reticle limited die, you can now move the problem statement to now a much larger package, 70 square centimeter, where you can do a lot more integration and pack a lot more compute or a lot more memory. And all this is translating into transformative products, right? So you can see, for example, the AMD MI300 and the 325 and 350 type of packages being developed with tens of tiles getting integrated and really delivering whopping performance generation over generation. The NVIDIA Grace Hopper, where you're integrating essentially 72-core CPU with a full Tensor GPU all in the same package, or the Google TPU, or the Intel Clearwater Forest chip, which is, again, a next-gen server chip with extremely high levels of integration. All this is possible because of these advances that I talked about earlier, and it's really unleashing higher and higher levels of compute than ever seen before. But building these multi-die systems is not easy, right? There are a lot of challenges one has to overcome. So if you look at how to go from the left-hand side of this picture, which is your 800 square millimeter reticle limited die, to the right-hand side of this picture, which is a 50 square centimeter, 60 square centimeter advanced package, you have to cross a lot of bridges to get there, right? You need to obviously be able to do system pathfinding. How do you disaggregate your monolithic SoC from the past, which has memory? It may have a bunch of IOs. It has, of course, your compute functionality. It has maybe some accelerators. How do you disaggregate that now into your advanced package? Maybe you want your IOs on an older node. You don't necessarily need your IOs at the most bleeding 2 nanometer node. Or you want to integrate the latest HBM3, HBM4 type of memory into your package. Or you want to move your compute section to the most advanced nodes so that you get the full density and power advantages. So this ability to truly go heterogeneous and to build and to design this and to do the pathfinding to determine what's the highest performant and best cost system, that's really what system pathfinding is about. And you need a very, very powerful cockpit to be able to do that. The second big decision is around die-to-die connectivity. There are a plethora of ways to connect up dies, right? You've, of course, got your HBM connectivity. You've got your UCIe and different flavors of UCIe. You have bundle of wires. So you have many different ways to connect up different dies in a package. So what is the right type of connectivity for the right type of outcome and overall system level performance? Another important one is system sign-off and analysis. So, traditional SoC flow, you're traditionally doing your static timing analysis, you're doing a power analysis, you're doing a physical verification to sign that 2D chip off. But in a multi-die environment, you are not only doing all the electrical sign-off, But you're also doing the multi-physics sign-off. You're doing the thermal sign-off. You're doing the SI, signal integrity analysis for all the die-to-die interconnect. You're doing the power integrity analysis, thermal integrity, stress analysis, because one of the leading causes of fails in terms of multi-die packages is cracking. So stress analysis also starts to become important. So you have to really broaden the type of analysis one has to do. And then, of course, SLM test and repair. The whole challenge around reliability, testing, repair in this multi-die context becomes significantly more complex than in the single die context. So let's take a look at the whole SLM and test challenges with respect to multi-die. I mean, first and foremost, let's start with the building blocks, right? You need to be able to test your individual chiplets. Obviously, in a multi-die system, it works only when each of the individual dies are working, so known good die. And then you need to be able to essentially quickly diagnose if you have a failed part that is returned, then which of the dies is failing, right? So all the diagnostics to be able to determine that as well. Then you have to be able to test the interconnects. There are lots of different types of interconnects in a multi-die system. And so how to essentially be able to do die-to-die algorithmic tests, as well as to be able to in-field repair the lanes of connectivity, right? Typically, if you look at UCIe or you look at HBM, there are multiple lanes of connectivity. And some of these lanes are redundant lanes which are deliberately kept there because the lanes do fail when you have large volumes of data going across dies. And you need to be able to detect it, and then you need to be able to essentially activate one of the spare lanes. All that is a part of lane test and monitoring. And then at the package level itself, you need to be able to access the individual dies, and then you need to be able to do the system level testing as well as all the RAS-related capabilities, right? So this is a lot of requirements that have to be met in order to have a holistic solution for this challenge. So to essentially summarize, right, for these AI designs, here are the requirements that we need to satisfy. First and foremost, these are very large hierarchical designs, so obviously you need a very robust hierarchical test solution for these complex AI architectures. Second, you need to solve the RAS problem in a fundamental way in order to address challenges like silent data corruption and other things we talked about. Power and thermal testing for AI workloads, extremely important, with one of the leading cause of failures of components. And then, of course, all the AI chips are generally multi-die advanced packages, so the ability to test multi-die is another key requirement. So let's now take a look at how to solve these challenges. And to help you kind of frame our view, the synopsis view of how the solution needs to be solved, let's start with the picture on the top. At the left end of the picture, you have an AI chip that you're designing, which was going to go through the design phase, the manufacturing phase, and bring up, and then all the way to an in-field deployment, 100,000, 200,000, million node clusters with connectivity and so on. And the goal is, when that full deployment happens and you're running that 2.5-month, multi-trillion parameter compute workload, with all nodes intensively switching during the course of training, you really want to minimize any interruptions due to hardware failures, SDC, and so on. That's the end goal. So there is no one magic solution for all of these to achieve this objective. You really need what we call as an end-to-end solution that encompasses all the way from test through telemetry in order to solve this problem in a holistic way. So let's start with, of course, IPs, right? I mean, a big part of this is to insert different types of structures, test IPs, monitoring IPs, and you need to be able to do this in a PPA neutral way, because it's not like you're going to compromise your routability for that. You're not going to compromise your power for that. You're not going to compromise your area for that. So how do you insert all the different IPs that are needed in a PPA neutral way? That's one step of aspect of the solution. Second, you need to reduce test volumes significantly. And so the next generation sequential compression, SEQ compressor, along with streaming fabric for the hierarchical elements, these are the kind of technologies you need to be able to reduce test volumes and accelerate test times. Third, there's probably going to be a lot of in-field related testing and power-on testing of these devices when they are deployed in the field, so X-tolerant logic BIST. Fourth, diagnosis. The at some point, chips are going to fail, either at manufacturing or in mission mode operation. And being able to rapidly root cause the weaknesses and then being able to address them is another key element of the solution. And especially with gate-all-around, this takes a completely new dimension because of all the complexity around gate-all-around transistors. Then the next one is really being able to get your data off the chip, the telemetry data off the chip, so that you can actually do something about it in terms of essentially looking at how your fleet is doing, essentially being able to do predictive management of your fleet, being able to do specific actions based on the data that's coming off chip. So you need the ability to have high-speed access to your test data and your telemetry data. So that's another key requirement. And then, of course, the actual telemetry, right? The in-chip, PVT monitors, the path margin monitors, the clock monitors, the signal integrity monitors, the droop detectors, the glitch monitors, all that is part of the IP that is part of telemetry that is inserted into the design so that you are basically getting the heartbeat of the design as it's going through this super intensive workload. Memories, big part of the solution, the ability to test them and repair them, especially as memory architecture is becoming extremely complex with HBM3 and now HBM4, where you've got a logic at the base of the HBM cube, and some logic is going to move from the compute into the base of the HBM memory. How do you test that? That's another huge area of complexity that needs to be solved. And then last but not least, when you have all this data coming from the ramp-up process and from the in-field production process in terms of all the telemetry data, you need a big data platform to be able to store the data and then mine the data for insights and to drive outcomes with respect to managing large fleets of these components. So really, the solution is not one magic wand. The solution is an end-to-end platform that can go all the way from being able to do tests through telemetry to data collection, and then as well as repairing things, right? That's what the solution entails. So let's take a quick look at some of these from a Synopsys perspective. Of course, we talked about the importance of the compressor architecture, and we have a next generation architecture that we have introduced called SEQ, which is basically really giving some of the best test volume reduction in the industry, as well as at a much smaller area and power footprint than ever before. The second key innovation is around X-tolerant LBIST, again, as part of the power on and mission mode testing, the ability to essentially drive out all the X's from your design as part of the self-test. Streaming fabric, key element of the hierarchical solution, being able to not compromise test times and test volumes as part of being able to do things hierarchically is very, very important. And so to be able to build the test structures at an IP level, subsystem level, and then connecting them up to the top level to the test I/O really has to be done with a very, very good architecture that is not compromising on test times. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the ability to pull the data, test data off chip using high-speed interfaces like PCIe is extremely important, and several hyperscalers have embraced this type of an approach in order to be able to test their whole fleets during the operation of their workloads. Another element with respect to hierarchical test is, of course, the ability to validate all the pattern porting that happens from IPs to subsystems to the top level, right? Because there's a lot of manipulation of the test vectors that is happening in this process, and being able to validate to ensure correctness is obviously very, very important. And here is where the test flow starts to connect in with the verification flows and other flows in order to ensure that. Now, the DFT logic itself is becoming a sizable piece of logic. So how do you know that logic is correct? So being able to self-test the DFT before you actually activate the logic test is obviously another key element of the solution. And then as you introduce things like streaming fabric to connect up things hierarchically, you also need a very close handshake with your ATE partners in order to make sure that you can identify the failed cores rapidly. Moving to telemetry. So as I mentioned, right, I mean, the ability to really listen to the heartbeat of your device as it's going through these super intensive workloads is absolutely critical to achieve a robust solution to that silent data corruption problem that we talked about earlier. So here we are talking about a very, very large family of monitors, ranging from not just the PVT, which is like the kind of the basic monitors, but monitors for monitoring path, for monitoring clocks, monitoring signal integrity, monitoring glitch and droop, all these types of things, and then being able to connect these up with on-chip fabrics, and then essentially providing, connecting them to the infrastructure that pulls the data off chip or reacts to the data on chip based on what the readings are. Of course, as I mentioned, memory is a big, big part of AI, and being able to test memory in all its different forms is an integral part of the solution, and SMS SHS is the leading solution for that. And then, as I mentioned, big data is a big part of the solution, being able to essentially take all this telemetry data and be able to looking at that data across the whole life cycle, from the NPI process, the high volume testing process, all the way to in-field, and then deriving insights, outcomes, and then driving them back in to improve is obviously a big part of the solution as well. And then finally ending on multi-die capabilities, right? So the picture on the right kind of shows you what a typical multi-die configuration looks like. You've got a multi-die system, you have two HBM cubes there, and they are connected to a compute die, and the compute die one is connected to two other dies, right? So essentially, you first have to be able to test the correctness of that HBM cube, as well as the PHY that connects the HBM to the compute. That's where our SMS EXT RAM solution comes in. It's a very, very powerful way to be able to test the sanctity of all those connections, and also to be able to do lane testing and repair of that PHY between the HBM and the compute tile. Now you look at the die 1 to chiplet 1 UCIe connection. Of course, you need to be able to do the lane monitoring there, signal integrity monitoring, as well as the repair of those lanes, and to use the redundant lanes when the primary lanes fail. So that's a big part of what the solution is. And then, of course, you have the 1838 approach as well, which has to be supported in order to fully kind of complete the solution for multi-die. So all in all, as you can see, right, the multi-die transition is very, very promising, but you need to think about all these things when you make that transition, because you're going to have these potentially millions of wires and connections running between dies and chiplets, and unless you have a testing strategy, a monitoring strategy, a repair strategy that ensures that these connections are robust, you're going to have fails, and then that brings you back to having many, many interrupts during your training process. So one of the first, I would say, industry-level demonstrations of chiplet interoperability was essentially at the Intel Innovation Forum, where Pat Gelsinger talked about essentially Intel packaging with a TSMC N3 die or chiplet from one source, an Intel 3-nanometer die from a different source, both having implemented UCIe, and two different PHYs, the Intel UCIe PHY and the Synopsys UCIe PHY, and then them talking to each other and essentially in a correct fashion, right? And all the expectations were essentially met about this connectivity. So this was the first, I would say, like public demonstration of taking different chiplets from different foundries, packaging them together, and then basically proving the validity and sanctity of the underlying PHY interface of UCIe. And this is, as we evolve in this chiplet era, even though today we see all the logic dies essentially from the same foundry, and the memory dies, of course, are coming from different memory makers, we do expect to see mix and match of logic chiplets as well, because that's really how you start getting a very, very robust marketplace of chiplets and becoming something that different companies can offer, an I/O chiplet or a compute chiplet or memory chiplets, accelerator chiplets, and then being able to integrate them in an advanced packaging framework. That's really where we see this going as we evolve this. So we've talked so much about how to enable the design of AI chips, but EDA, I believe, is one of the biggest and highest potential consumers of AI technology if we want to really move the state of the art forward. So let me talk a little bit about our experiences with AI. So, for us, the whole story started back in 2016. We all saw the AlphaGo accomplishment by DeepMind, and we started our AI research team back then. And we sort of started dabbling into reinforcement learning and started learning about those technologies. And essentially, after 3 years of work, we built a very, very powerful reinforcement learning optimizer, which we then integrated into our implementation tools. And we introduced that as DSO.ai, or Design Space Optimization, which essentially basically means that the typical place and route or synthesis process involves a lot of flows, a lot of recipes, a lot of tool parameters to get the best result for a particular design. And as algorithm developers, what we do is we kind of try to build like that 1 sigma algorithm that works for designs that fall in the plus minus 1 sigma, 2 sigma. But in reality, customers are trying to specialize, and no customer wants to fit in that plus minus 2 sigma. They really want to push the edges. And so you really want the optimal configuration of your algorithm for your design problem so that you're not leaving anything on the table with respect to the KPIs that you care about. So that's really what DSO pioneered. And then we rapidly started to see the adoption of AI amongst our customers. And today, as we end 2024, we have over 550 tapeouts using our DSO technology. But then we very quickly started applying it to other areas. We applied it to verification, we applied it to analog, we applied it to 3D IC design, as well as test, which I'll talk about a little bit later. Then the next big thing was data analytics. I mean, EDA generates a very large amounts of data. Test generates large amounts of data, right? Synthesis and place and route generate large amount of data. If you look at the fab floor, it is basically filled with thousands of tools that have, terabytes of process control data. And there's a great opportunity here to really build this data continuum where you're able to take these large amounts of data, store it in a very scalable data store, and then run AI/ML pipelines on the data to derive insights and to derive outcomes. So that's sort of the whole .da family of analytics products, and of that, Silicon DA is, of course, very, very popular in this community. And then when OpenAI in late 2022 showed the world the power of the LLMs with the ChatGPT, again, we kind of went into sort of dungeon mode and came up with many new technologies to enable what we call as LLM-based EDA. So today, our portfolio really consists of 3 tiers of AI capabilities. What we call as the optimizers, so take NP-hard problems and use AI reinforcement learning to really get the optimal configuration of those algorithms for a particular design by being able to rapidly search the solution space in a very effective and compute-effective manner. And we have applied that across many, many domains, as I talked about, and the gains are pretty significant, and I'll talk about that a little bit more detail. Then you have data analytics, which is really about collecting all the data from different sources and then being able to analyze that data for insights, and that helps in terms of things like fab efficiency and higher yield and quality and so on. And then generative AI gives us this extremely interesting opportunity, not just to build co-pilots to help our EDA engineers get answers faster or get help with writing scripts, but to actually start generating many of the collaterals of EDA, the ability to generate system Verilog, the ability to generate test benches, the ability to generate formal assertions, because formal is considered as something everybody wants to do but doesn't have the expertise to do. So can we use GenAI to essentially jumpstart formal with NLP descriptions rather than needing to understand how to write properties and assertions and so on. So GenAI has opened up many of those opportunities to really lower the barrier to the adoption of EDA. And again, obviously, it means to spread the ability to design to a much broader set of engineers rather than just the very few that are super trained in these things. So the results from AI are there for everyone to see. You can basically see all the customer names at the bottom, and all these customers have embraced AI technology, and the results are not something to scoff about, right? You're looking at image sensor companies reporting 12% shrink in the logic area. You're seeing GPU and CPU companies reporting much faster closure in terms of turnaround time, 4.5% frequency boost for an HPC customer, and then on the verification side, being able to achieve the same or better coverage in far fewer iterations by embedding reinforcement learning in the inner loop of the simulator, so that you completely change the trajectory of how the simulator is searching the DUT in order to essentially achieve high coverage. So all these things are rapidly becoming mainstream, and the community is just grabbing this out of our hands, because the desire to improve productivity in an environment where roadmaps are extremely stressed is extremely high. So we are seeing this across a very broad set of customers. Which then brings us to test, right? So why not, and how do we apply AI to test? And so let's start with one of the really challenging test problems, which is ATPG. And ATPG is all about coming up with a stack of algorithms that can achieve the highest level of coverage in the fewest number of patterns in the shortest amount of time. Right? That's the essence of the problem. And again, these are NP-hard problems, and as good engineers, we look for heuristics, and then we essentially improve them, we refine them, we change cost functions, we add lots of parameters to these algorithms, we sequence these algorithms in different ways in order to keep improving our set of results. But the reality is every design is different. And so taking an algorithm that has been developed in a certain way, that has been optimized for a certain set of designs, and then applying it to a completely different set of designs and expecting that you're going to get great results right out of the box is quite unlikely. And this is really where we believe AI can come in and play a huge role, right? Because essentially think about AI as the personalization layer that takes a generic algorithm and personalizes it for that specific design to get the best possible outcome. So in the case of ATPG, we were able to, again, use that reinforcement learning engine that we developed, basically wrap it around our ATPG engine, augment it with distributed ATPG capabilities to accelerate runtimes, and these are the results that we see at customers, right? 35% pattern count reduction in a GPU case, 14% in a mobile case, 24% in an HPC case, and 20% in a microcontroller MCU case, all with faster turnaround time, because not only do you get better results, you also converge much faster. And the story doesn't end there. You can actually apply AI further up in the test flow. The whole compressor selection, right? What is the right compressor and what is the right test architecture for my design? Again, it requires an expert to go do many, many, many experiments to go figure that out. Whereas, again, AI can be used here in a very powerful way to understand the design and then to explore the solution space around that design to determine the optimal compressor architecture and scan configurations and so on in order to get the best results for that particular design. So here again, we are able to see some pretty dramatic cycle count reductions at different types of customers. And again, it's a generic algorithm. It's not a specialized algorithm for every type of design. It's a generic algorithm, and what the AI layer does is it does that specialization by essentially tailoring the algorithm for that type of design, which then makes it easier to use, easier to adopt, lowers the barrier to entry, and so on and so forth. So, our user conferences are a great place for customers to talk about all their wins and all their gains with our technology. And so here's a couple of them I wanted to share with this audience. The Samsung graphics team essentially talked about using Streaming Fabric and SEQ to achieve 3x lower test data volume, as well as 2.5x test time speedups. And then using TSO.ai, they were able to get an additional 14% test cycle reduction. And then MediaTek at another SNUG conference talked about being able to accelerate test times by 3x with Streaming Fabric and the SEQ compressor, and then 21% test cycle reduction with TSO.ai. So these gains are real, customers are seeing it, and they're talking about it in our conferences. So in closing, let me kind of wrap up by really talking about the key themes of my talk today, right? So first, test and telemetry is more important than ever. If we want to build these robust systems to train very large AI models, the most intensive compute workload ever, we really need to embrace that this is an end-to-end solution that's going to be needed. Second, the compute and latency requirements of AI and silicon economics, the cost of moving to the most advanced nodes, are really driving the multi-die transition, and that's opening up a whole new set of challenges that we must overcome together. We need an end-to-end solution, right? You need the tools, you need the IP, you need the analytics to address this. So it's not like one thing is going to solve the problem. You really need to think of this all the way up to the system level in terms of how to solve this in a comprehensive way. And then, of course, as I closed on my talk, AI is offering an exciting new opportunity to go back to many of our traditional EDA domains and really be able to uplift with respect to quality of results by using techniques like reinforcement learning to find and search optimization spaces much more effectively. And generative AI holds the promise of autonomously generating much of the EDA collateral that all of us use in our day-to-day workflows. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and I'd love to take some questions. Thank you.
Yes, if we have some questions, thank you so much, Shankar. That was a great talk.
Thank you.
Visionary. Few questions we can take. We have a few minutes. Savita can start.
All right, great presentation as always. So we know that the cost is very high for using all this technology, but there's so much data that is being generated and processed, and that's also accelerating the effectiveness of AI in all these applications. Do you have any call to action for the rest of the industry? Like how can we leverage the data that is that is being specifically aggregated for the greater good, so to speak, so that we don't burn a hole in the ozone layer, we don't do these things, but we can still make sure that everybody offers some sort of differentiation in their products?
Yeah, thank you, Savita. So, as you know, this is a hyper competitive market, and every system maker and every chip maker is paranoid about guarding their data, and rightfully so, because the difference between these companies is just inches, and everybody needs to protect their proprietary property, right? At the same time, when I look at how, like if you look at the energy consumption of AI, I mean, it really comes down to being very surgical about where that energy is being spent. Like, for example, the design of that, the tensor, right? That's something where if you can do something dramatic there, and then you multiply it by 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, whatever, and that's the kind of savings you get. Or if we can do something innovative with respect to the multi-die architectures in order to lower the energy consumption of all the die-to-die interconnect, or lower the energy consumption of the read-write memory, which is all integral parts of that AI workflow. So I think that this is all happening within these large companies, but I don't know whether there are conferences and communities that are saying, this is an important problem. How do we, spend the collective cycles on trying to solve these types of issues?
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Please. Mehdi.
So Mehdi Tahuri from KIT and IMEC. So from the education side of it, I would like to hear your insight about using AI for EDA to close the productivity gap for hardware design. So just let me give you like the analogy to software. So software is mainly driven by productivity. So that's why it's going to, higher programming languages like Python rather than C, because it allows better productivity, but not efficiency. But in hardware, you're still on the efficiency side. So even as you showed that, squeezing the last percentage in the frequency is important. But do you think that, finally using AI in EDA can close this productivity gap? So allows us to have even something that is, written in RTL or even, higher specification languages to do more productive, but then the optimization is done by the AI.
Yeah, I absolutely believe that. So the thing is, if you look at generative AI, for example, right? Very similar to how GitHub Copilot is today, like multiple companies are using technologies like that to accelerate the software development productivity and efficiency. I expect within 2-3 years, as we iron out the kinks and the errors and so on, pretty much every RTL development team, every test bench development team out there, I expect them to be using that type of technology to generate RTL, generate large slabs of RTL, generate test benches, document their RTL. In fact, interestingly, code to doc is far more popular than doc to code, at least these days, right? So I expect all these things to pick up very rapidly in the next few years. But the thing is that one of the challenges with high-level synthesis is it has never been able to deliver the power performance area needed. So if you are like designing a tensor block, which is going to get replicated 100,000 times in your overall system, you cannot leave any ounce of power or area on the table. You just cannot, right? So that's why even if all the early prototyping may be done with Python and with those types of languages, the final implementation always ends up being system Verilog and making sure every register is gated and just every ounce of power is extracted from it. So I kind of see like there is going to be like mission critical IP where you can't leave anything, which is still going to be accelerated more by Gen AI in terms of, but still working at the system Verilog level because of the desire for PPA. But then there's a lot of context IP, which can definitely move up to higher levels like Python or others in order to accelerate, where you're not as, as intent about not leaving any ounce of power or performance behind.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, last one, Tapan.
Okay, so you have alluded to the energy requirement and all those things in a high compute intensive environment of AI and all those things, and it's just going one direction up. Now, these systems to work in the field and to be working correctly, we need to have a cooling mechanism of taking away this excess energy coming out of it. In the return on investment of all these things, that has to come into the picture also. Question is, it may not be our responsibility here, or somebody's responsibility has to be there to make a cost-effective cooling solution on this to support this high energy dissipation coming out of this AI environment. Any comments? I mean, how it's going to happen?
No, so I would say that this community has to consider thermal in a pretty fundamental way because of, even if the best cooling is implemented, because of the intensity of the compute workload, I mean, and the fact that most of these companies are going to go to gate-all-around, they're going to go to backside power, this community has to consider thermal in a pretty fundamental way with respect to all aspects to test and reliability and serviceability and all this kind of stuff, right? But, as I mentioned earlier, right, I mean, a company like NVIDIA is no longer considered as a component company. It's a system company. And the amount of innovation they have done with respect to liquid cooling and designing the right racks and bringing, 48-volt electricity to the top of the rack, all the stuff are all part of what I call as system-level innovations that have to complement what is being done at the device level. So, and as you know, there's a lot of literature around different ways of trying to cool these things. So,
I mean, if you go back, IBM had their own ways of system. These, even AT&T, where we come from, we had our own, but these are miniaturized systems. And however, the intensity of the energy coming out of it is extreme. So maybe new innovations.
It's a kind of an unprecedented workload.
Yes.
And therefore, I mean, you have to come up with unprecedented ways to solve it. I don't think the previous approaches will help, but like for example, when XAI built their supercomputer in Tennessee and turned it on, one of the first problems they had was essentially the huge draw that happens when you turn it on, when everything just starts switching at the same time. So how to stage the draw and how to even modify the workload so that you're stepping in versus you're just going one shot, all 100,000 or 1 million nodes in the cluster, all essentially switching. All these problems have to be, solved in order to address this problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks a lot. We truly appreciate it, Shankar. This was a wonderful talk. Thanks a lot.
With this, I'd like to invite Anne, our general chair, back to stage to close the session.
Yeah, so the big news is that the exhibits, it's time for them to open. We have coffee there right now. So please feel free to head on over to the exhibits floor, and then lots of good sessions later in the day. Thank you.